Hi everyone, Paul Akers with the American Innovator. I'm in Argentina doing an amazing tour, and I met this awesome man who gave us a lecture, who's a professor, and you're about ready to hear something very, very interesting. Hans, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're going to talk about.
Well, my name is Juan Schulz. I was born in Bariloche, Argentina. I'm going to talk about Nazi presence in Argentina, not only Bariloche. I'm going to talk about the war criminals who came to Argentina and also about the German-speaking community in the 30s. Eichmann case, Perón, that's the topics.
Excellent. So stay tuned because you're going to watch a fascinating lecture about 45 minutes long that Hans is going to give, and I was blown away by it. Enjoy this episode of The American Innovator.
He had lived in Bariloche for 40 years before that.
40?
40, 40 years, so a long time. He arrived in Bariloche in 54 and he was extradited in 95, 41 years. And this, I just give you this because while he was on house arrest, he wrote an autobiography. That's him at the trial in Italy, and this is the obituary by The Economist. So though you won't have time to read all this. It took me a few years to get all this information, but just for you to know and to see how the name is spelled. Erich Priebke. So Erich Priebke was a war criminal. Let me see. Here we are, whose crimes were committed in Italy. You know, I mean, the Holocaust, the Shoah happened in Eastern Europe, it happened in Ukraine, in Poland, of course, in Russia, and a few crimes also happened in Italy, France, Greece. Well, this one happened in Italy, and this is the place today. It's a memorial. It's in Rome, and it's called the Aretine Caves. And the massacre that happened here, the 24th of March, 44, is called, in history, it's named the Aretine Cave Massacre. What happened here, Priebke was involved in this. What happened here is that the 23rd, one day before the massacre, the partisans were fighting against the German occupation, the Nazi occupation in Italy, put a bomb, killed 33 German soldiers who were marching on the street, and after that the Nazis in Rome decided we're going to kill 10 Italians for each of the German soldiers that died. So they killed 335, they made a mistake, they killed more, 335 people inside these caves. They drove them there the next day, and in less than 5 hours they killed 335 people inside the caves. That's called the Aretine Cave Massacre. Priebke was an SS Gestapo officer during the massacre. So there is a book, I always show this because you might know the actor. There is a book written on this massacre, which is still the best book written about it by an American journalist, Robert Katz, Death in Rome. Based on this, they made a movie. I tell you all this so you know that we have a lot of evidence today. This is the movie. It's called Massacre in Rome. And Richard Burton, because you know, everybody knows Richard Burton, acts as this Nazi, who is the Nazi in charge of the massacre, the top officer. He gave the orders. So before you ask me this question, Priebke, after the war, when the war finished, was hit a while in northern Italy, and then in 48 actually he came to Argentina, escaped from Europe, 48, and in 54 to Bariloche, where he started living in Bariloche among us, the German-speaking community. And his excuse always was, because he never said that he was not there. He always recognized that he had been at the massacre, but he always said, I just followed orders.
Oh yeah,
you know,
that was their...
This guy, which is Richard Burton, is the bad guy. He gave the orders. I just followed them. That's what he always told. But he never denied having been there in Bariloche, because people say, did people in Bariloche know? Yes. Everybody knew that he had been at the Aretine Caves and that he had been an SS officer. Everybody knew that. You're going to realize now why I tell you this. Well, what happened then, I always speak a little bit more about Priebke because I knew him so well. In 94, this American journalist, Sam Donaldson, Sam Donaldson, you might know him.
Yes.
Sam Donaldson, well, Sam Donaldson arrived in Bariloche looking for a Nazi, because Pripke was not the only Nazi we had in town. We had more. But there was evidence against Pripke. They had evidence against Pripke. So in '94, Sam Donaldson approached Pripke in front of the German school in Bariloche, 1,000 students in front of the school. Why? Because Pripke by then was the president of the board of the German school. So when I tell you we had a Nazi inside, well, we had a Nazi inside. He was the president of the board of the school, of the German-speaking community. He asked him a few questions, said, "You're a war criminal, Mr. Pripke." Pripke said, "No, I'm not." "And you were at the other time caves?" And Pripke said, "Yes, I was, but I just followed orders." "You don't know what the war is, Mr. Donaldson. You don't know what an order is. During the war, you have to follow orders, this and that. I was a soldier, blah, blah." But he was in a high-ranking SS officer, not just a soldier. This interview is aired in the United States in '94, and in Argentinian government puts him under custody, and Italy asks for extradition. And so Pripke, as a war criminal, is finally extradited to Italy in '95. That's the end of Pripke's story in Bariloche. He arrived in Italy, he goes on trial, and he's sentenced to life. And he spends the rest of his life under house arrest. Why? Before you ask me that question, because he says, "I'm too old to go to jail." And they say, "Okay, we give him an apartment." So he lived in a very nice apartment till he died.
That's jail?
That was house arrest. And that was a strange house arrest because he was always out of the apartment. He was always having dinner with friends and walking around. So he was bad news for Bariloche, because whenever he was on the streets, there was, "Oh, the Nazi war criminal in Italy is free again," or is walking around Rome. Where was he caught? Bariloche. So that's why a lot of people relate Bariloche with the Nazis. Although Eichmann, for example, was caught in Buenos Aires and not in Bariloche. But it's a very recent case. So let's go to the second topic, German-speaking community. I will ask your question now. The German-speaking community, yes, we had a German-speaking community before the war. Like in the United States, you had German immigration. I mean, people who went to the United States, millions went to the United States. They went to Canada, they went to Brazil, they went all over. We had 500,000 German-speaking people living in Argentina in the 30s. They had their own schools, German language schools, clubs, churches, they spoke German, they had their own newspapers. So that community, like all over the world, in the 30s, became very sympathetic with the Nazis. Yes, they were very nationalistic, they were afraid of communism. They said, well, Hitler is a barrier against communism. Hitler put Germany on its feet again after the Versailles Treaty and this and that, no Nazi propaganda. And so they became very, very sympathetic with the Nazis. And they were 500,000, which is quite a number. In a country that had by then 15 million. I mean, a minority, but they made a lot of noise, of course. Nazis, whenever they are around, they make a lot of noise. You know, demonstrations and walking around the streets. So we had, let me show you this, we had Nazi, this is, we would call them Boy Scouts, German Boy Scouts, but they are really Nazi youth walking on the streets of Buenos Aires. They were organized in Buenos Aires. We had Nazi rallies. This one was the most important one. The 10th of April, 38, was a Nazi rally in Buenos Aires. 20,000 people.
So I still don't understand, what was the attraction to Argentina for the Europeans? Why did they want why did more people come to Argentina than any other South American country?
No, a lot of people went to Brazil. It was Brazil and Argentina. But Brazil had a lot of people, so a lot of people went to Brazil, but they blend in because there were a lot of people there already. In Argentina, we were quite empty, so that's when the Europeans came. We almost became very European because we had just a few natives and a few of the Spanish stock. That's why Argentina looks so European. We had at the turn of the century, you had almost, the United States had almost 100 million, almost, right. And we had only 10 million.
Yeah.
So we received 5 million.
Percentage-wise, they looked more.
Yeah, they looked more. And they came because the same reason they went to the United States. We gave them land, homesteading, and we were a land of opportunity. We are still a land of opportunity, aren't we? Oh, no. Well, but maybe not. Yeah, it's hard, you know, it's hard for you to understand that Argentina once was a land of opportunity. You know, my first wife, her name is Carol Jones. I have 2 children with her. You know what she is? She is the grandchild of the first white settler in this area. You know where he came from? United States. His name was Jared August Jones. So if you go to the other side of the lake, you see the tombstone, it says Jared August Jones, born Texas, 1800 mom, died Nahuelhuapi in the 1950. He lived almost 100 years. So even Americans came to Patagonia to settle. And you know, when people asked him why he came, he said, well, because Argentina was the land of opportunity and Texas was getting small. I mean, too many people. Because when Texas was already settled, well, this was still like wide open country. So Argentina always received a lot of people.
Frontier.
It's like a new frontier. We were like Patagonia is very similar to the United States, very similar. The area, the ranches, the Welsh who came to Patagonia too. Well, and this, before we change subject, this is a Nazi rally in the United States. Yes, so don't tell us we had the only Nazi rallies in the world. You had them too. That's Madison Square Garden. That's the German-American Bund. A group of...
Madison Square Garden.
That's Madison Square Garden, Washington's birthday, February 39. Yep. That rally, the Argentinian one, and that rally were the last huge rallies the Nazis did in the whole of the Americas. After that, Argentina said, wait a minute, what are these people doing? And after that, the Americans said, wait a minute, what are these people doing? So they intervened, the Nazi party was forbidden in Argentina, and the German Bund was forbidden in the United States. So it all disappeared in 1940. But what I want to tell you is this, there were Nazis all over. You know, Nazis, they didn't just go for Europe. Wherever there was a German, they would get hold of him and turn him into a Nazi. My father, I wanted to tell you this, my father also became a Nazi. I mean a Nazi. He was 14, a young boy. But he entered the Nazi youth. Young people, he always told me, they were not called Nazi youth in Argentina, they were called Boy Scouts. So I said, no, we were the German Boy Scouts. Yeah, with swastikas, you know, just German Boy Scouts. But he was 14, a little boy, of course, going to school, so the school would send him to the camps on the weekend, and they were having fun. Argentina was not Germany, of course. But in 1937, he made a trip to Germany, and he left a beautiful album with a lot of pictures. He spent 6 months in Germany for ideological training, really. He was doing like the military service there. He went to Nuremberg, saw Hitler talk. So I found all this when he died. He died in 2002, he was 82 years old, and then I found a huge box with a lot of information of his youth, his Nazi youth in Argentina, of course. He lived in Argentina, but there were newspapers, there were letters, everything. Based on that, I wrote my second book, which is this book, all in Spanish, out of print, don't worry. This book is called In the Name of the Father. Because it's written on all the evidence I found there. I said, well, how Nazi were they, the German-speaking Argentinians? And I found out through my father they were very Nazi. They were sent to Germany, they came back, they organized the youth, so they were really organized. Of course, that ended when the war started. You know, a lot of Argentinians started to say, no, wait a minute, what is this? And I tell you my father was in Germany in 1937, which was in between the Olympics, 1936, and Kristallnacht, which was 1938. So he was there right in between. You know, if we were talking about the Holocaust, the Shoah, Kristallnacht was like a turning point in Germany. After Kristallnacht, you know, people say, well, this guy is crazy enough that he can start killing the Jewish people.
Were you close to your father?
Oh yes, but that happened a long time ago. That happened before the war. And then my father married, and
You never discussed any of this with him when he was alive?
No, he never talked about this.
Yeah, right.
We never talked about
It's
this.
typical in the United States too. World War II veterans don't talk about
Yes,
their
and in this case, you know, the Nazis really into the Holocaust. Well, forget it. Nobody wants to talk
Is this
about
the Hindenburg?
I don't know. I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
let's go to the third topic. I'm just worried about the bus.
This is fascinating.
No, you're fine.
The third topic is Perón. Where is Perón? Perón is gone. Perón's Nazi time. Oh, Perón is gone. Well, somebody took my Perón visual. Well, but I have this one, which is inside, because this is the Time magazine, '98 Time magazine. Actually, the cover shows Perón, and it says Perón and the Germans. And this is inside the Time magazine. Perón's Nazi ties. I show you this also to show you, this is the Argentinian army. They look very German.
Wow.
Why? Because we really were under the influence of the Germans, but not the Nazis. We started way back in the 19th century. You know, they admired the Germans and the Prussian army and the way the discipline and this. So they sent the Argentinian officers to Germany to train. We asked advisors to come to Argentina till Second World War. Then it was over. You know, Eisenhower came to visit Bariloche. You know that in 1960.
No, we don't.
No, you don't. Hey, come on! You don't know that? I have a picture of myself in front of a plane. But I was 5 years old.
Did you meet Eisenhower?
No, I was 5 years old, and he was at the Xiao Hotel. But I will show you this because it's very interesting. You know that Obama came to,
Yes.
and I have a few pictures. This is Eisenhower with Frondizi, our president. This is my mother. I'll give it to you now. This is me and my sister in front of Eisenhower's plane, a Constellation.
Wow.
And that's Bariloche 1960. And it's also, I just want to show you this because it's incredible. You know, when Obama came, for about a month before he came, they started with security measures. So we had like, you were walking in the forest and suddenly a sniper would appear. You know, what are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm speaking English. They were really taking care of him. And when Eisenhower arrived in 1960, on this helicopter, on the garden of the Xiao, look, he arrived with a helicopter alone, a group of people waiting for him, and even a woman on a horse. That's incredible.
The contrast.
The contrast, that's the contrast.
Right.
It's incredible.
The lack of security versus.
Yeah,
security.
versus the 1960. But what I wanted to tell you, if you look at the army, these pictures might not show it quite clearly, but if you see pictures of Eisenhower arriving in Buenos Aires, you would see the Argentinian army doesn't look like that anymore. They look like an American army, like United States Army. They had American helmets, American uniforms, and even the way they are, a little bit like this, you know, a little bit informal, but they're all like, it really changed.
The
I mean,
contrast
after the
between
war,
the German influence
yeah,
and the American influence.
after the war, I mean,
Wow.
German influence was over. But why do I tell you this? Because Perón was an army man, and Perón sort of admired the German army. That doesn't mean that he admired the Nazis or that he would go for the Holocaust, but it means that he had something left for the Germans. So, Perón. That article talks about this book, which is The Real Odessa, which you can buy in the United States because in Amazon, The Real Odessa, this book, it's about Nazis, Argentinians, Germans, and Perón. So I think it's one of the best books written about this topic, The Real Odessa. And you might know this one, the Odessa File.
That's
Yeah.
the file.
Odessa File. Why do I show you this? Because both books talk about the Odessa. So before we get just to Perón, let me tell you, when the Nazi war criminals, so let's say this. Argentina had a German-speaking community. They became very sympathetic with the Nazis in the 30s. Then Argentina stayed neutral during the war. We never went to the war. We never sent soldiers to the war. So the first reason the Nazi war criminals decided to come to Argentina, or the two main reasons were, we had a German-speaking community, sympathetic to the Nazis, and second, Argentina stayed neutral during the war.
Okay.
Brazil didn't. Brazil fought the war. So for a German to come to Brazil was different than to come to Argentina.
Sure.
Because we never killed the Germans never killed an Argentinian. In Brazil, they had casualties. So it was a different story. So Argentina was the best place to come. So when the Nazi war criminals decided we got to leave Europe in the 40s, second part of the 40s, they had the help of the Odessa. That's what I want to tell you with this, the Odessa. What is the Odessa? It's an acronym. It stands for an acronym. It means in German, Organisation der ehemaligen SS-Angehörigen. In English, Association of Former SS Officers. So it was a network, the network of SS officers who were all criminals, of course. After the war, they said, well, what do? Let's help each other. So the first help they had was the Odessa. The Odessa is the SS, I mean the criminals themselves. Then there were people from the Vatican who helped. There were former fascists who helped, sympathizers, whatever. And then there were the Argentinians in Europe after the war. Perón sent Argentinians to Europe to bring them. So the question is why or who do you want to bring? Well, he talked about the useful Germans, not the Nazi officers, the useful Germans. The useful Germans were people like Werner von Braun. I tell you this because you know about it.
Yeah.
Werner von Braun and the 120 rocket scientists, here are the names, useful Germans. Of course, the United States wanted to get all the useful Germans they could, because if not, the Russians would take them. Cold War was starting. But Perón did the same thing. Perón said, okay, let's send some Argentinians to Europe to bring useful Germans. Why? We needed technicians, we needed scientists, we'll offer them jobs to build planes, to industrialize Argentina. So you heard about the Wamul Island, the island on the lake where they tried to do the atomic bomb. Argentina was the first country in South America to build a jet plane with the help of the Germans. That's 51, 52. So he was successful in bringing a few useful Germans. But inside the group of useful Germans, the Nazi war criminals came to Argentina.
Yeah.
So if you take it historically, all of the Americas, the only two countries who opened up a road to bring in useful Germans, United States and Argentina. But Argentina didn't ask a lot of questions. In the United States, they asked a lot of questions. I mean, you fought the war against the Germans. So they would really check you if you would come to the United States. In Argentina, nobody checked. So among the useful Germans, a lot of war criminals came into Argentina. And Perón closed his eyes, his ears, he didn't ask questions. And that's how they came in. That's why they came into Argentina. German-speaking community, Argentina's neutrality, and Perón, who said, yeah, let's bring them, who cares? They all came with different names, different identities. They didn't come like, I'm Mengele, I'm Eichmann, I was there, the final solution. No, they would say, I'm Clement, I'm Meyer, I'm this, different names, different papers, forged papers, false identities. That's how they came to Argentina. From Argentina, they went to other countries. Last topic, Eichmann. I won't tell you much about Mengele. Everybody wants to know about Mengele. I just tell you his story in brief. He came to Argentina in 49, stayed in Argentina for 10 years, till 59, mainly in Buenos Aires. And in 59, when the Mossad was already looking for war criminals in Latin America, he decided it was a good moment to leave Argentina. Perón was gone by then. So he went to Paraguay. And in 62, he went to Brazil. And in Brazil, he died in 79. So he died a free man. He drowned. He had an attack, a stroke. He had a stroke and he fell into the sea, fell into the sea, and he drowned. 79. So that's Mengele's story, very short. Here he is. Here is Perón. See, that's a cover of the Time magazine. Perón and the Nazis. Here he is. That's a cover.
From a stroke.
And the Nazis.
Mengele. Mengele died, yeah. He was already sick. He was having problems with his head. So he had a stroke, fell into the sea and died. But he died a free man. He was never caught. And with another name, of course. He was buried with another name. He came to Argentina with another name. I think he used like 5 or 6 different names when he was going from Argentina to Paraguay to Brazil.
Excuse me, did you say Werner von Braun came to Argentina?
No, to the United States.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
just as an example.
That's what I thought.
Just as an example, I mean, that Perón thought, well, if they take Werner, good old Werner, I'm going to bring me a few Germans
Yeah.
to Argentina. Well, I'm going to tell you about this man, who is Eichmann. And with this we finish, you can ask me questions. Eichmann, this is Eichmann in Argentina, Life magazine, Eichmann. You look at him, if you are familiar with Eichmann, you look at him and he's Eichmann. So he was not really hiding. It's a little bit like Priebke. They were not hiding really in Argentina. They thought they would never come for them. But he came to Argentina in 1950 under this name, Ricardo Clement. So he came with a fake name. And he was abducted by the Mossad in 1960, still having his own name, Clement. He was never Eichmann in Argentina. But what he did is a mistake, strange mistake. He brought the family, his family, from Austria to Argentina with their own real names. They didn't change their names. So suddenly in Argentina, there was the Eichmann family, Klaus, Dieter, Horst, Eichmann, 3 sons, and the wife living with Clement. 52, 53, that's when they arrived, so it's weird. And they started to blend into the German-speaking community, and they would ask, who are you? I'm Klaus Eichmann. Oh, Klaus Eichmann, and your father? Oh, our father died in the war, of course. Where do you live? Well, I live with another one, with an uncle, Clement, who looked like Eichmann. So that lie didn't last long, yes. So in 57, a German of Jewish descent living in Argentina sent a letter to a prosecutor in Germany saying, why don't you take a closer look to Clement? I think he's Eichmann. So this prosecutor gave the information to the Israelis, to the Mossad. Didn't give it to the Germans. He said, if I give it to the Germans, so many Nazis still in Germany, diplomats and lawyers and judges, so I better give it to the Israelis, to the Secret Service, the Mossad. So the Mossad in 1960 came for him. There's an interesting book. This is the, let me see. The house, where's the house? Do I have one? Here's the house. Well, this is the one. Oh, that's the house. Here it is. That's the house where Eichmann was living in. That's the bus he used to go to work at Mercedes-Benz. And this is the house again, very rural, outskirts of Buenos Aires. That's where he was living. If you look at the pictures, very rural. This is Eichmann dressed with a poncho, and this is Klaus Eichmann, the son. What happened in 1960, May 1960, 10-man team, Mossad team, came to Argentina. There are more books written, there are a lot of books written about this. This is a very good book if you ever want to read something. This book, Neil Bascom is also a journalist, Hunting Eichmann, this is in Spanish, but it's a great book. I like this book a lot because that's Isser Harel's book, and Isser Harel was the head of the Mossad who came to Argentina. So it's a first-hand account. It's called The House on Garibaldi Street. But this, which is a new book, has more information because it's more actual. 10-man team in May, 10-man team arrived in Argentina, waited for him. Of course, they had done surveillance, so they waited for him. He was coming home from work, grabbed him, put him on a safe house for 9 days in Argentina, waiting, something will happen, nothing happened. And so after 9 days, an El Al plane, this is the pilot, arrived in Argentina, bringing in an Israeli delegation, with Abba Eban included. And they went to see Argentinian authorities who were celebrating 150 years of our existence, Argentina. And on the same plane, they flew Eichmann, disguised as a flight attendant, to Israel. So high-end, very effective Mossad operation.
Wow.
So in May, it was the most successful actually Mossad operation because in those years the plane didn't even make it to Dakar. They didn't want to land in Brazil because they were afraid Argentina would call them to check the plane. So they made all the way to Africa. They arrived with almost no fuel at Dakar. So it was quite something. But of course Eichmann was very important for the Jewish people, of course, and for everybody because he went on trial in 1960 where they said we got Eichmann, and he was caught. They didn't say the Mossad. The Israeli government said he was caught by a group of very focused Israeli volunteers. Of course, it was a Mossad operation. And then, before you ask me the question, the Argentinian government complained, of course, hey, what are you doing? You kidnapped an Argentinian. And there's a very interesting letter, I don't know if it's an Eban letter, to the Argentinian president saying, look, Eichmann is, crimes against humanity, we're going to trial, he will go for trial because of the Holocaust, where they killed 6 million people. So let's leave these little formalities aside. We're going to keep him. And the Argentinian president, wrote a letter saying, yes, okay, it's okay, and everything finished there. They wouldn't send Eichmann back just because of a formality. He was too big a criminal, too huge a criminal. 61, the trial, glass cage, 8 months, more than 100 Holocaust survivors talking. That trial was very important for the Holocaust, for everybody, because it showed the dimension of the Holocaust for the first time. It was aired worldwide, and there was always Argentina. And so in 61, 62, he was sentenced to death. He was killed. He was
Executed.
Yeah, he was executed. He was hanged. Before he was hanged, his famous last words?
No.
You know them?
I didn't do it.
No, wait. He said, yes, of course. Well, he always said, I'm just a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
But what he said there was, long live Germany, long live Austria, long live Argentina. Those are the 3 countries which I felt so closely related, and I will never forget. So that means a lot. First, it means that for 10 years he lived in Argentina, and second, that he was well treated in Argentina. Because if not, he would not have said, long live Argentina. And he wrote a lot, Eichmann. So he also wrote about his arrival in Buenos Aires. And when he arrived by ship from Italy in July 1950, he wrote, oh, there I saw the lights of Buenos Aires, the city of Buenos Aires. I felt like coming home. So why do I tell you this? Because that means that for the Germans, Argentina was always a country that was sort of sympathetic with them. They say, well, this German-speaking community in Argentina, they're with us. They're Nazi. So no good. I'll end with my last 3 pictures, and my first pictures.
Why don't you turn this into a PowerPoint?
Why? Because I like this. Everybody says.
I like pictures.
But wait till I finish. Why do I show you this? Because the first American president who came to visit Bariloche, you know who he was? Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt came in 1913. He was not president by then. He had been president. He had lost the elections against Wilson. And he did this incredible trip from Chile, Argentina, and then he ended up in the Amazon, the River of Tao. There's a book written.
Great book.
Yeah, great book. But there's another good book, which is this book. You should read it. It's called A Book Lover's Holiday in the Open. And why do I tell you this? Because there's one chapter that talks about the crossing of the Andes. Because he came from, and it's in internet, you can download it. He came from Puerto Varas, where you're going. You're going to Puerto Varas, and he was there. So he came across the Andes to Bariloche. And you know what he did here? He visited the German school. The German school in 1913 was already there. But of course, there were no Nazis. But there were a lot of German settlers. And he described the German settlers in a very interesting description. And he had dinner with them at the German school. The same German school where Priebke, the war criminal, ended up being president of the board in a different time. Well, here they are. And this, because I finished this, so Theodore Roosevelt visited the school. So we had, like going back to your original question, we had German settlers living in Argentina at the beginning of the century, the 20th century. They were already here. They came from Chile. So there were Germans all over the world. Of course, settlers, not Nazis. In the 30s, the school put another flag in front of it. So it's the same building that where Theodore Roosevelt had dinner with, but different flag, different time, the 30s. The community became Nazi.
How did Theodore Roosevelt describe the school?
Just like the old days, you know, he says, well, they are like the settlers, some German settlers in the United States. That was even before World War I. They said, oh, it's like the United States, the settlers, these tough guys, they're going to build up. This is like the American West. He described Patagonia like the American West. A very sort of objective description. Well, this is the 30s. This is the school in the 60s, same school. I went to the school, primary school. And this is a picture 11 years before Sam Donaldson arrived. With this I finish. Why do I show you this picture? Because it closes the whole story. This is the mayor of Bariloche. This is the German ambassador in Argentina. This is 82. This is my father, who was the president of the board of the school. And this is Erich Priebke, the war criminal, who was vice president of my father for 25 years. So if you tell me I knew him, oh yes, I knew him very well.
Did you have conversations with him?
Oh yeah. So we had a Nazi inside, we had a Nazi inside. What is this? A time of silence, the conspiracy of silence. They came, the Nazi war criminals, helped by Peron, with the help of Odessa. They established themselves in Argentina and blended into the German-speaking community, and everybody tried to forget about them. Till, you know, some inquisitive journalist arrived, like Sam Donaldson, saying, "You're a war criminal." And then the story ended. If I knew him, look, this is a letter.
The story ended with Pipkin.
The story of
and with
his...
him, but not. Is at that point that all the Nazis that were potentially hiding in Argentina become unraveled and they all became?
No, because some of them were already gone. Eichmann was 1960, and we had extradited a few also.
How many
That was
total?
the end of Priebke's story.
What's the total number of Nazis they estimate was in Argentina?
The book, the Odessa, the real Odessa, talks about 300. 300, among them 100 Croatians. And 100 Austrians and Germans, and the rest were from all over Europe. But what he says, but what he says, and what other people say, is that there were more war criminals that came. But to build a legal case, a legal war criminal, you need evidence. And there was not enough evidence to go against them.
Of the 350, how many were high level?
Excuse me, let me go here. Yeah.
I mean, are we in the question period?
Yes, let's start the
Okay,
questions.
okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, let's start here.
Well, is the Eichmann family still here, on those descendants?
Eichmann had brought three sons in 52, and then he had another son with a wife in Argentina. That son, everybody knows the whereabouts of that son, because when Eichmann was caught in 1960, and he was hanged in 62, and 63 or 64, the wife with that little son went back to Germany. She became very religious, crazy religious, fundamentalist religious, and like, yeah, she just sort of like became very crazy. And not because of the religion, because he was sort of couldn't stand all this. And the little son became a quite famous anthropologist, archaeologist. And he is there at the news, they ask him questions about the father, but he never knew the father. Wait. And then the other three sons stayed in Argentina. They were not little, they were like 25, 18, and two of them were married already with Argentinians of German descent. So those families stayed in Argentina, but they just disappeared. They are under the radar.
Does the Eichmann name persist though, or did they?
I don't know. No, I don't know really, because I know they had daughters, and the daughters married. Like for example, Priebke came with two sons. One son, no children, lives in New York. The other son, three children, lives in Bariloche. And he never had, well, actually he had a son with one other woman, and two daughters. The daughters married, they were Priebke, maiden name Priebke, but they married, and so they don't use the name anymore. And the only son, who was still called Priebke, a young guy, I think 25 or 30, the grandchild of Priebke, he just now was allowed to change his name. Because he went to justice and said, I don't want to be called Priebke, because they all were making fun of him. They, oh, you're a Nazi, hello. So he said, no, forget about it. And yes, and he in school, you know, and he looks, if you look at him, he looks like the grandfather. He looks like the war criminal. Incredible.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. So every family, going back to your word, every Nazi family, every family of the Nazis has a different story.
Yeah.
You know, some went back to Germany, some left Argentina, some stayed, some married, some. Of course, they were not to blame. They were just sons and daughters off.
When did the German Jews come into the country
A lot of them came in between wars. 35, 36, 37, 38. That's when they came. A lot.
And they were welcomed?
Yeah, well, they came. We never. Yeah, we never
Yeah.
hadn't. But they came and established themselves. They were the German Jewish people were quite wealthy. They had a high level of culture, so they were like musicians and related to the art world, to banking, so they were wealthy. So they came to Buenos Aires and established themselves in a few suburbs of Buenos Aires, Belgrano, for example, and
So they
and
weren't
they were like they were always like separate to the other Jewish people. You know, the bulk of the Jewish people we have comes from way back, comes from the 19th century, comes from the Ukraine and Russia through when the pogroms happened, the end of the 19th century, 20. That's like 200,000 came to Argentina.
Okay.
So and the German Jewish people were a minority compared to them, a minority, maybe 1,000 or maybe 2,000. But they sort of lived like separate. They also had the synagogues in German and
Oh,
yeah.
so they necessarily weren't Nazis though?
No.
If they came
No, the
during
German, no, the German Jewish people, not at all.
Right, but the ones who came in the 30s, yeah.
Uh,
They might have seen things happening that they disagreed
Oh, they were
with. and-
Jewish,
yeah,
of course
and then-
they were Nazis.
Right.
I mean, they were going for them. I mean, they had the laws, the Nuremberg laws in 35, and they were going for the Jewish people in Germany. So
No.
almost all of them left Germany.
Yeah, but I mean,
200,000.
you said some of the some
No,
of the
Germans
people who
didn't come.
came,
Who came were the Jewish German people.
the Jewish German. Okay, I have a question.
The Germans came, maybe a few came that didn't like the Nazis, but they
Right.
were a minority, absolute
Okay.
minority. Most of the Germans loved
Okay,
the Nazis.
have you seen the History Channel's
Yes, I have.
documentary
Yes, I have.
on Hitler?
Yes, I have.
Supposedly wasn't killed
Yes.
in the bunker. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's rubbish, but that's my opinion. You believe it or not, I don't know. The way they handle the documents and the sources is so primitive that, I mean, no historian, and if you look at it, no historian works with that channel, it's called History Channel, but there are the only journalists, no historian, no university, nothing related to the, for me it's fiction. I mean, nobody found the remains of Hitler, but that doesn't mean that he came to Argentina.
Right.
And he came to Bariloche. The most famous writer about of these books lives in Bariloche. Hitler in Bariloche, Hitler in Villa Mortura. I don't believe that story. I think he's dead and that's it. He died at the bunker. For us, for a lot of people, they are conspiracy theories.
There's always conspiracy.
You might believe them or not. It's just,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
I was just curious what your take was on it.
That's my opinion. Yeah, that's my opinion, of course. It's just an opinion.
That's good, that's fine.
What time is it? ¿Tenés todavía tiempo? Sí. ¿Sí? ¿Estamos?
So is the German community well respected here in Bariloche? No problems, no issues,
Yes.
no tension?
No tension, no. It's well respected because it's like Chile also, southern Chile. Germans, are considered, because the Germans in Argentina, well, they were not in Germany, so they
Right.
always say we are Argentinians and we have nothing to do with it. And Germans are always, that's what also Roosevelt tells. I mean, they were always considered very hardworking people,
Right.
responsible, and so that's how Argentinians consider the Germans, or the Swiss, not only the Germans, the Swiss, the Austrians, most of the Europeans except the Italians. But I have an Italian grandfather, and my father was totally German. I mean, German descent. He always said, "No, Argentina looks like this because of the Italians." Because we have a lot of Italians in the country. And their president is Macri, Zanetti is the vice president is Michetti. He was running against Scioli and Zanetti. Our mayor is Genuso, and the other guy was Massa. They're all Italians.
Who has the biggest influence in Argentina? The Italians, the French, the Germans? Who do you think really influenced the country the most?
No, not the Germans at all. No, the Italians, I think.
The Italians?
Well, the Spanish stock
Yeah,
in the
obviously.
beginning,
Yeah.
the Spanish stock, because we were a Spanish colony. And we will
But over
become
the
a
last,
new one.
let me
We'll become a
rephrase it,
colony
over the
now.
last 100 years, who influenced?
It's I don't know your opinion, but I think it's the Italians, Spanish, Italians. Depends on what On what, I mean, what dimension
Just the
of
whole
the
structure of the company, how the company's organized. Let's say politically.
Politically, the Italians have a lot to do.
Yeah,
Like-
I agree with that.
Yes, and then also the Jewish people. The Jewish people, they're very important in universities, in journalism, as writers, as historians, as whatever, as scientists. So Jewish people are also very important in Argentina.
How do you explain that heavy Italian influence?
Yes.
I mean, was
Because
it-
we
was there
received a
any-
lot of Italians, because most of the people we received
Throughout
came from
history
Italy.
or
No, it's the
anything
last
like that?
migration,
The last-
starting
the
at the end of the
last
19th century.
migration?
No, we didn't have Italians. They were all Spanish. They
So
were
they all came at the same time?
Yeah, there were
Jews,
natives.
Italians, like.
Yeah,
And
they
all
were
our
natives
country.
and Spanish.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Argentina, 1880, said, welcome migration. And that's when like 4 million migrants came to Argentina. Starting at the end of the 19th century till 1920, so till the First World War. Like 3 to 4 million, that's what they say. Maybe 6 million came, but 3 million left because the way Italians were coming and going for the crops. They were coming for the crops and going back to Italy. They were making a lot of money in those years. But 3 or 4 stayed, and most of them were Italians. I would say 70% were Italians, so like 2 million were Italians. So then they have an influence on the country because the Italians are really hard-working people. They're hard. In Bariloche, we have this idea that Bariloche is German, and then they're all Italians. I mean, the ones who own, I mean, I think, well, this hotel might be not Italian, but I don't know. All the hotels are owned by Italians. All the chocolate factories are Italians. They're all Italians. So were the Germans, and yet we have this idea of being the Swiss, the Argentinian Swiss. I mean, no, I mean,
Yeah.
Seco, Fenoglio,
Yeah,
they're all,
Fenoglio, yeah.
big companies. They're all
Primo
Italians.
Capraro, even the German
Yeah.
school doesn't have a
Yeah.
German name.
Even
it
the
has
German school has an
Italian.
Italian name. Yeah, I mean, Primo Capraro. And also the big businessmen in Argentina, Roca and Macchi, they're also, a lot of them are Italian. They're the wealthy Argentinians, a lot of them are Italian. Spanish, Italian, not so many Germans. No, the German influence is not that strong. I think they are more like, they have good advertising, like Goebbels,
Yeah.
Minister of Propaganda.
Yeah.
They're very good in advertising, but the truth is that I think Italians have the strongest influence in the country. I mean, they're Argentinians now, but of Italian descent. Like I'm Argentinian, he's Argentinian, we are
Yeah,
Argentinian.
my last name is
We're-
Italian.
Yeah, see,
Okay.
and we don't consider ourselves
No.
Europeans. We are Argentinians. But when we say, okay, this guy's of German origin, this guy's
Well,
of Italian.
We're all the
Irish.
same, we're all the same. We're
Yeah,
from
it's the
all
same
over.
way. You say, where are you? Well, I'm Irish, or my
Right.
family's Irish, and whatever.
But we're American.
We're not.
Yeah, the only ones who are really American are the natives.
That's right.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it wasn't called America when they were there, so
No, it's not.
they're not even American because it wasn't called. It was just their land.
But it was the
Who knows? I know. Who
It
knows
was
what they
an
called
English
themselves though?
Well, they
just
had all
called
They
different
called
themselves
it
names.
tribes.
America. Amerigo Vespucci went around the world, and that's why they named it when he landed, although he wasn't the first one.
I know, but the ones that lived there didn't call it America.
Oh, no, they didn't call
That's
themselves
They all had the
America.
different
They
names
just
for
called their
themselves
tribal
because-
names.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tribal
Yeah.
names. Yeah,
Tribal
tribal names like the
names, yeah.
Mapuche here and the Burunakena and
Yeah.
Aoniquena. We
Yeah.
call them Tehuelches, but their real name were Burun and Aoniquena. So we even changed names. Araucanos. We say Araucanos, but they're Mapuche. So we put different names on them, and they're not the real names they use.
What were the golden economic years for Argentina? Were there any time in Argentina's history that were really economically a robust powerhouse?
Well, if you take the whole of the Argentine history,
Just the last 100 years.
it's the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. That's when we started.
Because of the immigration.
Immigration, and land was free, and the boom and the export, commodity prices were very high, so we were like in expansion.
But
And then
whether-
it ended in 1930 really with the
Right.
big depression.
Been up and
Big
down
depression.
since then.
First
I
World
guess-
War was great. The World Wars are great for us. I was just reading something that about Peronism. Peronism in the first time after Second World War, Perón became president, 46. So everybody, they had like a good time because we were still having all the money that came from the businesses we did during the World War. And then in 49, a little crisis was starting. And so a lot of Argentinians thought, oh, we need a third world war, you know, because we always made a lot of money with the wars.
Sounds like
We,
a problem.
I mean, we were never related to the wars. We never fought in the wars. But we always made good businesses in the war. Because we sold
particularly-
meat and,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you. So
but it didn't
what-
happen.
Mostly agricultural,
That's a
supplying
joke.
agricultural goods for war efforts?
Yes, it's raw materials.
And were you supplying them primarily to the Allied forces or to
To the
Germany?
Allied, to the Allied forces, always. Yeah, to England, to England, basically. Our ties were with England. till
And
the Second
primarily
World
meat or what?
War. Meat and,
Meat was a big
and
thing.
wheat, meat and wheat.
Okay,
Food.
fascinating.
I worked a long time with the British, and they will,
Yeah.
many of them will remember
Yeah,
about the
remember.
Argentinian corned beef, like we come in a can
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
from the
Yes.
war.
The high
Yes.
quality?
They have
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
Oh yeah, you
I
talk,
know about
no, they were
it.
good. You talk with any Englishman who went through the war,
Yeah,
and they would
they
tell
do.
you, oh yeah,
Argentina.
Argentinian corned beef.
I know.
Wow.
Uruguay and Argentina, we provided
We went to-
all the meat.
Fantastic, interesting.
Is that still the biggest industry?
And now it's more diversified, but yeah, agriculture is very, very important. now.
What about
So
textiles?
soya beans now, soya beans, also wheat, meat not so much, but it's all raw materials mainly.
Precious metal, precious stone, gems?
No, gold, a few gold mines, but no, not like South Africa, so no, not really. The rich part of Argentina is the pampas, the humid pampas. And then a little bit of industry. We also have a little bit of industry.
And what are your main industries?
No, we don't have a main industry, but a lot of the agriculture, we call it complejo agroindustrial, a lot of the agricultural products are also processed in Argentina. So we sell, that's like industry related to like milk or this and that, and we had steel, aluminum, we have oil, we have quite I mean, we don't run it well, but we have a lot of wealth. Argentina, we don't manage it. We don't manage it well.
That's really my next
but we're
question.
a wealthy country.
Why not? Why aren't?
Oh, I don't know, because of the
Because the
Italians.
Italians are.
Of course.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Oh, my.
If we would have that answer, it would change, but
Have there been any episodes or rallies or whatever you want to call them of neo-Nazism in any of the Argentinian cities?
no, not really. We had one like a month ago in Mar del Plata, but they're like minorities. I mean, this group of crazy people who could be anything because
Right.
they are neo-Nazis because they have the boots, you know, and they
Yeah,
march on.
yeah, yeah.
But they're forbidden in Argentina, and you can wear a swastika, you can show a swastika in Argentina. So it's quite. Look, I told you I teach history, and now next week I'm gonna show the children a movie by Leni Riefenstahl, who's called The Triumph of the Will, which is Nazi propaganda. It's like 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
You know, in Germany, you cannot show the movie unless you have permission from the government. If you're a teacher, you can show the movie. You have to ask your mayor, the principal, say, I want to show this movie. Why? Because of this. Okay. Then they know you as a teacher. Then they ask the government, and the government would say yes. And even in Argentina, I had to tell the children today. I did today. I said, look, next week we're going to see this Triumph of the Will and Riefenstahl. I just want to tell you, it's Nazi propaganda. I have nothing to do with the movie, but I want you to see and to experience what the Nazis make with propaganda. But I don't want you to become Nazis after the movie. And I'm not a Nazi, I'm this and that. I had to tell it, and I have to tell the principal also, look, we're going to watch this movie. And they would know me, they say, yeah, Hans, go ahead.
Right.
But if they wouldn't trust me, they would say, no, don't show it. You have to be very clear with that, even in Argentina. I don't know, in the United States, it's different. You got like this freedom of speech.
Yeah, I think we should.
But we, related to Nazis, we are very careful in Argentina. Very careful. Yeah.
You don't want that image.
No, you don't want an image, and you can show that movie, you know, and say, well, my teacher showed us The Triumph of the Will, and he said it's a good movie. Well, you can run into trouble, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Especially if your name is Hans.
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this week's American Innovator. I loved it. I love learning about history, and I love hearing about firsthand perspectives on what took place in other countries. So we'll see you next week on the American Innovator.